The first death. It all started in 1988. After using voodoo magic to transfer his soul into the body of a good guy doll, the serial killer Charles Lee Ray, now Chucky, begins his hunt against little Andy Barkley, only 6 years old. But there was a weakness. Trapped inside the doll for too long, Chucky was starting to turn human on the inside. His organs were beginning to form, and that meant a shot to the heart could actually kill him. At the movie's climax, the chase inside the apartment reaches its breaking point. Chucky is trapped in the fireplace, and the flames consume his plastic body. Charred, missing an arm and a leg, he rises from the ashes even more terrifying, staggering, and laughing. Karen Barkley and Detective Mike Norris fight to hold the creature back. Karen fires several times at Chucky, blowing apart pieces of the doll, his head, his limbs, until he's reduced to scattered parts all over the room. Even so, Chucky manages to crawl through the house ventilation using only one arm, determined to finish his curse. That's when the final shot happens. Norris hits the doll's heart directly, the one spot that could really kill him. Chucky's body jerks back, motionless, and silence fills the scene. The first death in the franchise is unforgettable, and it ends with a macabre irony. The doll's weak voice still spits out his classic catchphrase.
I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
It seemed like the end of Charles Lee Ray's curse, but as you already know, this was only the beginning. The explosion. 2 years after the events of the first movie, Andy Barkley now lives in a foster home, since his mother was sent to a psychiatric institution. Meanwhile, the Play Pals company, the one behind the Good Guys dolls, decides to rebuild Chucky in an attempt to clear their bad reputation and prove their toys are harmless. But the marketing stunt goes wrong, very wrong. As soon as he's reborn in a new body, Chucky starts another hunt, killing anyone who gets in his way of reaching Andy. After murdering the boy's foster parents, the doll forces Kyle, Andy's foster sister, to take him to the boy. The final showdown happens inside the Play Pals factory itself. Among conveyor belts and giant machines, the setting turns into a nightmare. Chucky is no longer the friendly doll from the store shelf. Even needing a cart to move around, he fearlessly charges at the boy, but misses the strike and gets stuck in the machine gears. That's when Andy manages to open a valve right above the monster. A stream of molten plastic pours onto Chucky, covering his entire body. The hot material hardens, sticking to and deforming his face, turning him into an even more grotesque version of himself. But even that doesn't stop him. Twisted and hardened, he still keeps trying to finish his goal. In desperation, his sister comes up with a fatal idea. He grabs a compressed air hose and shoves it straight into the doll's mouth. The pressure starts to grotesquely inflate Chucky's head, swelling like a balloon about to burst, until it explodes in a rain of plastic, blood, and guts splattering all over the factory. It was one of the craziest deaths so far, and it seemed like the definitive end. But, as always, not with Chucky, the fan. Although released just a year after the second movie, the story of Child's Play 3 takes place many years later. Andy is now a 16-year-old teenager attending military school, but even in this strict environment, Chucky's shadow comes back to haunt him. During his new hunt, the doll meets Tyler, a younger and more naive cadet.
What's your name, kid?
Tyler, what's yours?
Chucky. But, my real name is Charles Lee Ray.
Chucky sees in him the perfect chance to finally get an easier human body to possess and tries to transfer his soul into the boy. But Andy isn't about to let that happen. He storms into the Devil's Lair ride, where Chucky is trying to perform the ritual, and the two clash among the attraction's mechanical props. In the middle of the fight, a huge mechanical scythe does this. The blade slices across Chucky's face, tearing half of it open. Now he's not only terrifying because of his murderous nature, but also for his grotesque appearance, with plastic and blood mixed into a nightmarish portrait. Even mutilated, he keeps trying to finish the ritual to take Tyler's body. This doll doesn't give up. The boy manages to shoot Chucky and he loses his arm. Another shot hits his chest and the doll falls backward. For a brief moment, it seems like the fight is over, but suddenly, Chucky jumps onto Andy's back again. Exhausted, Andy sees his only chance to end the nightmare once and for all. He takes a pocket knife from Tyler and with all his strength cuts off the doll's hand, sending him tumbling into a giant fan. The spinning blades suck the killer doll inside. The fan shreds Chucky into pieces, scattering doll fragments through the air. It was the end, or at least it seemed to be, the grave. Years later, in Bride of Chucky, the franchise shifts tone, mixing horror with dark humor and sarcasm. Tiffany, his old lover, manages to recover what's left of that shredded body. Stitching each part back together with her own hands and performing a voodoo ritual, she brings Charles Lee Ray's soul back once more. From the wreckage rises a new version of Chucky, now more threatening, covered in scars, and with an even crueler smile. The reunion quickly turns into a lover's quarrel.
You mean you weren't gonna ask me to marry you?
What are you, nuts?
When Chucky refuses to marry her, Tiffany locks him inside a toy playpen. In revenge, Chucky breaks free, pushes Tiffany into a bathtub, and throws a plugged-in TV into the water, electrocuting her to death. The macabre irony is that Tiffany, now trapped in a doll's body, becomes Chucky's bride, and so the killer doll couple is formed, acting like a horror version of Bonnie and Clyde. They kidnap young couple Jesse and Jade and go on a road trip with one goal: to find Charles Lee Ray's human body and the heart of Damballa, the amulet that can turn them human again. At the climax in a cemetery, Tiffany, now in a new doll's body, realizes Chucky doesn't truly love her. In an act of defiance, she stabs him in the chest, but she dies shortly after. Jesse then smashes Chucky with a shovel and throws him into the open grave, where Charles Lee Ray's human body is buried. Inside the pit, furious and mocking, Chucky looks up and spits out his final words before the end.
Go ahead and shoot. I'll be back. I always come back.
Jade doesn't hesitate. She points the gun into the grave and fires multiple shots. The bullets rip through the doll's tiny body, and he finally falls lifeless at the bottom of the grave. The revenge. In 2004's Seed of Chucky, the saga takes an unexpected turn. Glenn, the son of Chucky and Tiffany, lives as a ventriloquist doll in England. Traumatized and confused about his origins, he runs away after seeing on TV that his parents' dolls are being used in a Hollywood movie. Using the Heart of Damballa amulet, Glenn manages to bring Chucky and Tiffany back to life.
Wake up. Ade due Damballa awake.
At first, there's an attempt at change. Tiffany believes they can stop killing, but Chucky, true to his murderous nature, quickly goes back to slaughtering. At the climax, inside the hospital, the tension explodes. Chucky kills Tiffany in a fit of rage, and before Glenn's eyes, the family bond is completely destroyed.
Oh, yeah. Be a good girl. Or boy. Whatever.
Horrified but consumed by anger, Glenn turns against his own father. One strike rips off Chucky's arms, another cuts off his legs. Even in pieces, the doll keeps laughing maniacally, mocking his son. But Glenn doesn't hesitate. He delivers the final blow to Chucky once and for all. The head rolls across the floor, motionless. It was the end, at least for that body. The flashback. After 9 years away, Chucky returns in Curse of Chucky, bringing the franchise back to its gothic horror roots. The movie begins with a mysterious package arriving at the home of Nika, a young woman in a wheelchair living with her mother, Sarah. Soon after, Sarah dies under strange circumstances, and Nika's family, including her sister Barb and brother-in-law Ian, arrive for the funeral. As the night goes on, family members are brutally murdered one by one. First, he starts with Jill, the babysitter. Then he kills Barb, who goes up to the bedroom where he is, still thinking he's just a harmless doll, but she gets too close.
Close together.
Later, he continues his killing spree with Ian, who suspected that everything happening was Nika's fault, but he realizes too late that it wasn't. Near the end of the movie, Chucky reveals a flashback of his past to Nika, explaining his connection to the family and why he's doing all of this. We find out that Charles Lee Ray, still human, had kidnapped Sarah years earlier and developed a sick obsession with her. It was during this time that he ended up being hunted by the police, wounded, and cornered inside the toy store. There, with his last breath, he recited a voodoo spell, and only after lightning struck the store did his soul enter the body of a good guy doll. That's how Chucky was born. The final showdown happens inside the house, already consumed by chaos. Nika alone faces the killer doll head on. She grabbed a knife and struck Chucky in the back. The doll stopped moving and it seemed like the end. But as always, he doesn't really die. Right after, Chucky appears sitting in a chair, a cruel reminder that the curse would continue.
So, who's next?
The original head. Years later, Nika's story continues inside a psychiatric hospital. It's in this setting that Chucky's voodoo reaches the peak of its power. Now he's able to split his soul into multiple dolls, spreading chaos among patients and doctors. Meanwhile, Andy Barclay, the same kid from the very first movie, now an adult scarred by a lifetime of being hunted, keeps his own twisted trophy, the original Chucky's head, locked away in a safe. It's alive, conscious, and Andy torments it without mercy in a macabre game that reveals both his thirst for revenge and the obsession that still consumes him. While that doll was being tortured by by Andy inside the hospital, one of the Chuckies finds an even darker escape. He manages to transfer his soul into Nika's body. Free from the wheelchair with a new human body and a sadistic smile, Chucky heads off to meet Tiffany. Together, they vanish into the night, starting a new chapter in the curse: The Return. A few years after the events of Cult of Chucky, we find out that Charles Lee Ray's curse wasn't buried in the movies. Now it's reborn in a new format, a TV series. That's where we meet Jake Wheeler, a lonely teenager who finds a good guy doll at a yard sale. What seemed like just an old toy quickly becomes the start of another massacre. After weeks of tormenting Jake Wheeler and his friends, Chucky finally meets what looks like his end. Fueled by rage and the weight of everything he's lost, Jake grabs Chucky by the neck. The doll fights back, laughing and twisting, but Jake doesn't let go. Through tears and screams of fury, he squeezes until he crushes the doll's body. For Jake, it's a moment of revenge and release. But as we know with Chucky, death is never really the end. The cargo accident. Right at the start of season 2, Chucky shows he doesn't come alone. A truck loaded with dozens of good guy dolls, each carrying a fragment of his soul, hits the road. The plan was grand: to infiltrate a children's event and spread his essence as if they were evil clones. But fate has an explosive ending. Inside, dozens of Chuckies are consumed by the flames. Plastic and stuffing fly through the air, glowing in the blast. The poisoning. In season 2 of Chucky, we got one of the craziest moments in the whole franchise. As we already saw in Cult of Chucky, the doll discovers a new trick. He learns a voodoo ritual that lets him split his soul into multiple bodies at once. That means there's no longer just one Chucky, but many dolls possessed, each carrying a part of Charles Lee Ray's soul and personality. And here we have 2 of them: Buff Chucky, trained and conditioned to be physically stronger, and the Colonel, a Chucky who takes on a leadership role like a general. Buff Chucky was different. He looked unstoppable with his muscles and brute strength, the kind of enemy no one would dare face. But the Colonel wasn't just anyone. While Buff Chucky relied only on strength, the Colonel used strategy. He knew muscles mean nothing against someone who knows when to strike. And that's exactly what happened. The Colonel poisoned Buff Chucky, cold and calculated. The franchise's giant had no chance. His body slowly paralyzed until he collapsed, lifeless on the ground. In the end, no matter how powerful you are, there's always someone smarter, ready to take you down. The gunshot. In episode 7 of season 2, Andy, after years of running and fighting against different versions of Chucky, finally faces one. Without hesitation, Andy shoots the doll. It's the original survivor, showing that no matter how many Chuckies appear, he'll always be ready. The chainsaw. One of the most memorable deaths happens when Lexi jumps on Chucky, grabs his chainsaw, and uses it against him mercilessly. The deafening roar of the blade fills the air, building almost unbearable tension. In a burst of fury, she charges straight at Chucky. The doll screams, curses, and tries to fight back, but the chainsaw rips through his plastic body. This time, it's not just a slash. Lexi shreds him into multiple pieces, scattering stuffing and plastic all over the floor of the abandoned house. The bomb. Chucky has always been over the top, but in season 3 he reaches an apocalyptic level. After infiltrating the White House and manipulating everyone around him, the killer doll manages something unthinkable: access to the nuclear codes. Inside the control room, the place is pure chaos. Alarms blare, red lights flash, and in the middle of it all stands Chucky with that evil grin on his plastic face. The monitors show a nuclear being launched toward the North Pole, and that's when Chucky, in one last provocation, yells. At that very moment, the screen bursts into light. The doll's body starts dissolving out of nowhere, as if being consumed by the very energy of the disaster he caused. Little by little, he disintegrates into dust, disappearing right before everyone's eyes. But, as every fan knows, when it comes to Chucky, not even bullets or the deadliest fire are a guarantee of his end. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more. Because just like Chucky, we always come back.